Israel's ever-growing list of heinous acts has now just reached the continent of Africa. In this video, we're going to discuss what exactly has happened and expose why this is a huge unresolved issue for the continent of Africa. Thank you so much for choosing to watch this video today. If you don't know me, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed. And on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics. Picture this. In just 72 hours, one country attacks 6 different nations across 2 continents. Bombs fall on Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Qatar, and yes, even African soil. In this case, we're talking about Tunisia. This isn't some global superpower flexing its muscles. This is Israel, and it's happening right now while the world watches in silence. But here's what should terrify every African. One of our own countries has been bombed, and most of us don't even know about it. On September 9th and September 10th of 2025, Israel drones struck 2 ships belonging to Global Sumud Flotilla while they sat peacefully docked in Tunisia's Sidi Bou Said port. These weren't military vessels, these were humanitarian aid ships carrying food and medicine to starving Palestinians in Gaza. The family boat, flying a Portuguese flag with 6 people on board, was hit first. 24 hours later, the British flag Alma was also struck. Tunisia's government initially tried to cover it up, claiming the fire started from cigarette butts. But video evidence shows projectiles falling from the sky and exploding on impact. Think about the audacity here. Israel bombed African territory. They sent drones over Tunisian airspace and attacked ships in Tunisian waters. This isn't the first time either. Back in 1985, Israel fighter jets flew over 1,200 miles to bomb PLO headquarters in Tunisia, killing at least 47 people. They called it Operation Wooden Leg. Today, they're calling it national security. We should be calling this out for what it is, a violation of African sovereignty. Tunisia has finally admitted the truth, describing these attacks as premeditated aggression. But where is the outrage from the rest of Africa? Where are the emergency African Union meetings? Where are the continental sanctions? The silence is deafening, and it reveals a painful truth about our fractured continent. While Tunisia burns, Zambia rolls out the red carpet. On August 12th, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar inaugurated Israel's new assembly in Lusaka after 52 years of closure. This isn't just symbolic. Israel sees Africa as a $1 trillion opportunity. Their own studies show massive trade potential across our continent. They're not just embassies out for friendship. They're establishing footholds for resource extraction and political influence. Let's be clear about the numbers. Since October 7th, Israel forces have killed over 62,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 150,000 others. The International Court of Justice is hearing South Africa's genocide case against Israel right now. 14 countries have joined to support South Africa's position. Brazil officially joined in July, saying the situation demands international intervention. But here's the contradiction that should shame every African leader. While South Africa fights for justice in The Hague, while Tunisia gets bombed in the Mediterranean, Zambia celebrates new Israeli partnerships. Foreign Minister Mulabo Hembe dismissed concerns about the embassy, calling critics misinformed. He said Israel isn't the only country in conflict that Zambia has relations with, mentioning Palestine as an example. But Palestine isn't bombing African countries. Palestine isn't establishing embassies to extract African resources. Israel's expansion into Africa follows a clear pattern. They lost observer status at the African Union in February 2024 due to their actions in Gaza. So they're going country by country, rebuilding relationships through bilateral deals. They've reopened embassies, increased trade missions, and offered development projects. It's a classic neocolonial strategy wrapped in a modern diplomatic language. The timing tells you the whole story. As Israel faces international isolation over Gaza, as European nations impose arms embargoes, as Australia and Canada distance themselves, Israel turns to Africa. Not because they respect us, but because they need us. They need our votes in the international forums. They need our resources for their defense industry. Zambia exports copper, manganese, cobalt, materials that are all vital for Israel's military technology. This is exactly why Africa needs unity. When individual countries can be picked off one by one, when Zambia can ignore what's happening in Tunisia, when continental solidarity crumbles before bilateral economic promises, we become vulnerable to everyone. Israel knows this, and they're exploiting our divisions. Look at South Africa's position. They understand that Israel's treatment of Palestine mirrors the apartheid system they fought to destroy. President Nelson Mandela said it clearly. Our freedom is incomplete without Palestine's freedom. South Africa leads the genocide case in the International Court of Justice because they recognize the pattern of racial oppression and systematic violence. But South Africa can't stand alone. When Tunisia gets bombed and only Tunisia responds after trying to cover it up, Israel learns that they can attack African countries without continental consequence. When Zambia opens embassies while Palestinians die, Israel learns that it can divide African opinion with economic incentives. These lessons encourage more aggression, not less. The flotilla that got bombed in Tunisia represents what African unity should look like. 50 ships from 44 countries working together to challenge the illegal blockade. They include Nelson Mandela's grandson, Mandela Mandela, and delegates from across the world. This is international solidarity via activism. Yet when Israel attacks the humanitarian mission in African waters, most of our leaders stay silent. Consider the religious extremism angle that nobody seems to talk about. We constantly hear about Islamic extremist groups in the Sahel region claiming God justifies their violence. We condemn them rightfully for kidnapping girls and creating destruction in God's name. But Israel also uses religious justifications for their actions. They speak of biblical connections to the land and divine promises, a chosen people's narrative. This is also religious extremism, but it gets international protection instead of international condemnation. The death toll speaks for itself. In Gaza, we've already talked about the 62,000 people that have been killed. But in these recent attacks across 6 countries, in 72 hours, hundreds more died. In Qatar, Israel bombed a meeting discussing peace proposals, killing 6 people, including who they say are Hamas leaders. This week, Netanyahu stated clearly there will be no Palestinian state. This isn't about security anymore. This is about permanent occupation and gradual elimination of Palestine presence. No two-state solution. The irony cuts deep. Descendants of Holocaust survivors implementing politics that looks remarkably similar to the ethnic cleansing their ancestors suffered through. History lessons seem lost on those who should remember them best. For Africa, this creates a test of values. Do we stand with the oppressed or the oppressor? Do we choose economic partnerships over moral principles? Do we let our continent be divided by external powers playing us against each other? The answers we give today will determine Africa's role in tomorrow's world. Israel's strategy in Africa is complicated. Offer development assistance, promise technical transfer, provide military training, and gradually build dependency relationships. It's also been linked with providing weapons to the conflict in Sudan. Once established, these relationships become hard to break, even when Israel's actions violate international law. Zambia's government already says they can't judge Israel's actions because they maintain relationships with all partners. This is exactly the neutrality that enables continued violence. The African Union expelled Israel's observer status for good reason. The continental body recognizes that Israel's politics towards Palestinians violated African values of liberation and self-determination. Let's face it, the African Union is not really a powerful institution, and individual countries can still be bought off with bilateral deals. This fragmentation weakens our collective voice precisely when we need it most. What's happening now in Gaza mirrors what happened across Africa during colonization. External powers dividing populations, controlling resources, imposing collective punishment on entire communities. The methods look familiar because they come from the same playbook. Israel's defense establishment studied South Africa's apartheid tactics. They learned from colonial experiences across the continent. Tunisia's experience shows why continental unity matters. When Israel can bomb African territory with minimal consequence, they learned that Africa won't defend itself collectively. This invites more aggression, not only from Israel, but from any power that wants to test Africa's resolve. Our weakness in one place becomes a vulnerability everywhere. The solution starts with honest acknowledgement of what's happening. Israel is expanding into Africa while simultaneously attacking African countries. These aren't separate issues. They're part of the same strategy. Reward compliant African governments while punish those who resist. Divide the continent to prevent unified opposition. African leaders must choose. Will we stand together against aggression or let ourselves be picked off individually? Will we prioritize short-term economic gains over long-term sovereignty? Will we learn from Tunisia's experience or wait until the bombs fall on our own soil? The time for neutral positions has passed. When one African country gets bombed, we should all feel this attack. South Africa shows the way forward. Their genocide case in the International Court of Justice puts international law above political convenience. Their position costs them economically and diplomatically, but they understand that some principles simply cannot be compromised. Other African nations should follow this example instead of rushing to establish new partnerships with the aggressor. The Global Sumud Flotilla attack in Tunisia represents the spirit Africa needs: international solidarity, collective action, willingness to sacrifice for justice. These values built our liberation movements. These values should guide the foreign policy today. When humanitarian missions get bombed in our waters, our response should be continental, not individual. Israel's actions in the past 72 hours revealed their true intentions. This isn't about self-defense anymore. It's about regional dominance backed by unlimited American support. They bomb our continent because they believe Africa won't respond collectively. They're testing whether we'll defend each other or abandon each other. The choice is ours. We can continue letting external powers divide us with economic promises while they bomb our neighbors, or we can remember that African unity isn't a slogan. It's our only defense against a world that still sees us as exploitable resources rather than equal partners. The bombs that fall on Tunisia could fall anywhere. The question isn't whether we'll face such a challenge again. The question is whether we'll face them together or alone. Are you outraged by what Israel has done, particularly now as it crosses its conflict into the continent of Africa? I really appreciate the support that I see in the comment section. So if you have nothing directly to say, would it be too much for you to say the words "one for all and all for one"? It just lets me know that you watched the video to the end, you like the message, you support the channel, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.